by the blood of our people are your lands kept safe.
I see in your eyes the same fear that will take the heart of me.
So do all who live to see such times.
By all that you hold dear, this good earth.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting.
All right, this one I really wish I had my counterpart, my better half, to properly balance out the discourse here with me. Maybe we will revisit this. As I've said in other videos, this week it's just me. We will get back to our regular scheduled programming with a little bit of something extra, so stay tuned for that. But until then, it's just me. And yeah, so the season 1 criticism, you don't need to go far. On this very channel, you can go down in the comments and find people calling us Amazon shills. Now, I have voiced my displeasure at the show multiple times. So, we are not shills for Amazon. There is a lot to criticize here. There's a lot of good that goes overlooked, sure, but there's a lot to criticize. And we have a response here from Morford Clark. Am I saying that right? Anyway, I'll just say Galadriel, because we all know who that is. The main character of the show. A character that the depiction of was heavily criticized. I mean, maybe more heavily criticized than some of the other aspects to the show, such as the appearance of female dwarves, the skin color of elves, the armor styling of Numenor, the acting and the characterization of some of the elf characters from the books and leaders that seem a bit off. All these things. Some of them have some validity. Some of them are just nitpicky. But Galadriel is one where I think we had such a strong Galadriel in the original trilogy. And knowing that this show is going to be based on Galadriel, this character was kind of a make or break. And the fact that it's not over the top positive reviews of this character is a problem for the show going forward, because this is the character. I mean, I know there are other characters going on, and I've talked about how much I actually do end up liking Elrond, and I do like I liked Adar. We're not gonna have Adar anymore, but I like that actor and character. Sauron, there's some good there. There's also some silliness there. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and you can look at those characters and say, maybe the show isn't just one character, but I truly do believe it is heavily on the back of Galadriel. Because you also got the stranger. You've also got the people in Numenor, but Galadriel has to land right, because we know that character from the films, from the original trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. We know this character, similar to Elrond, which is why those are the two characters I think I talk about the most. They're the ones that we actually know and have interactions with. So Elrond and Galadriel have to work for me, for this show to fulfill what I believe it's intended to fulfill. But I digress. I'm getting carried away here. That's why I need another person here. Clark seems to get it. Now, we've talked about this before. The writers say that they've read the books and want to... I mean, the words they used was they want to write the story that Tolkien never could or didn't write, or something like that. But the gist of it is like they're kind of They want to write a Tolkien-esque story but have it be original. And I get that idea. I get that mindset, especially after some of the criticism that I've made personally, as well as I've seen online about some of the more recent depictions of either video games or other adaptations. I get it. You want it to be your own. You don't want to just regurgitate what's already been done. At the same time, Clark does seem to get that there is a protective nature there for the fans, because if you're just gonna take the names and places and not put in any effort, it is clearly then just a cash grab. Now all of this is a cash grab. Don't get me wrong. The Mario movie that just came out, the Sonic movies, the Last of Us show, the Star Wars stuff, it's all just cash. They're just trying to make money. I get that. But you need to at least put effort in to give the fans something. Otherwise, it's so blatant and so silly that you end up ruining the entire name of that project. Star Wars, I think, is one of the best examples right now. I'm not that big a hater on Star Wars. It might sometimes come across like that because my partner in crime is a big fan. I don't hate Star Wars, but I also recognize that they have lost a lot of the trust from their fans that they can actually come out with a proper Star Wars movie that lives up to the incredibly high, and rightfully so, the incredibly high expectations. And that's what people are going to have about Lord of the Rings, the new Harry Potter TV show that was just announced. They're going to have the same expectations there. And if you do no effort in terms of trying to satisfy those high expectations, then obviously people are going to be upset. And so Clark seems to get that there's a protective nature there, because they don't want their story that they love to become a joke. I don't want, when I say I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings, I don't want it to be in 20 years time people to laugh at me because the only thing that they remember is this TV show, because the movies will be so far removed. And that's essentially what people are upset about. Now, at the same time, there is a timing issue as well. I think, right now people have kind of backed off on heavily criticizing shows. I mean, yeah, there's some people that are highly praising, the Mario movie that just came out. You've got like Mandalorian stuff. You've got the Last of Us coming out, and people are now starting to highly praise stuff. And I think the timing of it, people understand now that nitpicking isn't the way to go. So when something is slightly off, it's not the biggest of deals. And I think that's why we're starting to see people be more positive about some of these projects. And at the time of Rings of Power, it was in a time where people seemed to almost enjoy hating on projects. And so there's also that aspect to it as well. Now, House of the Dragon is interesting because it had a little bit of both. There are people on YouTube, TikTok that absolutely love it, and I don't get it. I think it suffers from the same writing issues that Rings of Power does. The only difference being the dialogue, but the overall plot seems just as kind of random and weird at times. And some of the continuity of characters don't really exist. So I'm surprised at how much praise eventually that House of the Dragon got over Rings of Power. But I think Rings of Power is probably the bigger IP, so maybe that's it. And also Rings of Power did have the dialogue being as silly as it was at times. It's so easy to criticize. I mean, I do it all the time on this channel. And it stands out so much. Whereas, to its credit, House of the Dragon dialogue top notch for me. the plot though bad. So I'm stuck where, I like some aspects of it, don't like other aspects of it. Like, to be honest, I actually like the plot of Rings of Power better. I just think the dialogue and some of the acting isn't as good or up to par. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. Clark gets it. So here we have her quote right here. Because I'm a fan of this type of genre, I've read books that have then been turned into things, and I've been like, I don't think that house would have looked like that. So I really get it. What's so wonderful about these worlds and these characters is that they don't exist, and yet they do so intensely in so many minds. So I think that there's an idea that you can't please everyone. But also, I do respect the ownership of her, because I know if I was on the other side, I'd also be feeling that way. I feel very protective about that. I feel quite protective of making sure she's safe from harm. So she does seem to understand the concept about where the criticisms of her Galadriel are coming from. Now, with that in mind, though, my problem is, and this is why I need another a person here to kind of balance me out. The problem is, she can be like, Clark can get it, and I have no ill will towards her. I actually think she gets more criticism for her acting than she deserves. The problem is, I don't know how many people on the set are as big of fans of Galadriel from either the books or the original movies. I don't know if someone's there to see if there's any way to bridge some continuity between the two. Now, I understand that Amazon does not own those movies and is not exactly trying to make them all fit tightly together. I get it. We know that clearly from the art direction and style of the show. The props department is clearly going in a different direction with this show. That being said, the entire pitch to fans is that this is essentially a prequel, right? Like, otherwise, what are we doing? What are we watching? You could literally just do a fantasy show. You could just do a fantasy show just like this with different named characters. It doesn't have to be Lord of the Rings. The reason that Lord of the Rings works is because people already know what Lord of the Rings is, and so you can do a show like this without any backstory needed, and it works. Now, this show does throw in backstory, so you could just make this about anything, but for the fans, this is supposed to be a prequel to The Hobbit and then the original trilogy. Like, that's what this is. That is the pitch that you made to the audience. And I don't know if there's anyone there who both understands why people might be upset with Galadriel, at least the depiction of Galadriel, and then are also trying to protect that same vision. Because it's not like we all have completely different visions. Like, that's the one thing Clark says, that these worlds and characters, while they don't truly exist, they exist intensely in our minds. And there's this idea that you can't please everyone. Well, the thing is, you don't need to please everyone. Most of us have a pretty similar idea, and the ones that don't probably don't care as much because they have this separate idea that they invented, and they're kind of on their own. While most of us tend to congregate and understand the overarching style and substance of the character. Now, I will say that this era of Galadriel, this time period, isn't that explored, and so maybe there are people who have a different opinion on Galadriel than I do, and perhaps it's more correct. Perhaps if Tolkien was still with us and you were to ask, I were to pitch my idea of Galadriel and someone else were to pitch theirs, and they were in the minority, they might be right, but that's not the world we live in. And so I think at this point you kind of go with what the consensus is here, and right now the big problem people have with Galadriel is whether or not her character is going to be able to make the turn into the mystical, mysterious, almost otherworldly, even amongst elves, Galadriel we see in the original trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. And I don't know how to make that turn, because right now the Galadriel we have is making so many mistakes and is so egregiously opposite what we expect that there can't be a quick turn. It can't, like Game of Thrones is the perfect example where we all knew what was coming, and yet it happened so fast and it was so poorly executed that it ended up feeling off. And that's the worry that myself and I believe most Lord of the Rings fans have with this this version of Galadriel. So it's not that she is making mistakes, it's that she's making so many mistakes and they affect so many people and are so vast. And despite all of that, she seems unwilling to change her ways. It's not even clear what would cause that. Now, we have seen probably her biggest mistake being revealed here, which is the ushering in of Sauron back to power. Perhaps that is a big enough catalyst, but then is that what we're going to see seasons 2 through 5? A more quiet, repenting Galadriel that is now tapping into her abilities and her magic more than using her sword? Is that what's going to happen now? Because if not, what ends up making that turn? Like what happens that would cause her to start that transition? And also, what happens to make her not want to go with the Fellowship when Sauron rears up again? So those kind of questions are going to be hard to answer. Like I don't actually have one off the top of my head. I would have to really think about how I would structure a show if I were in charge. If they fired everyone and brought me in, how would I try and salvage this? And I really don't know. I don't see how Galadriel can come back to having the respect and eminence that the character should have. And that's where we are. So while I'm glad that they do have some respect and understanding about where the criticism is coming from and where it's directed, I just don't know if that's enough to save it. So that's my thoughts on it. Let us know down below. What do you guys think? So the question isn't what do you guys think of the Rings of Power. I know what you guys think of the Rings of Power. The question is more, is this enough of a statement of understanding that from one particular member of the cast to give you some hope for season 2? I do have hope for season 2. I want it to be good. I don't want things to suck. So I do want it to be good. But I'm hesitant that despite them understanding where the criticism is coming from, I just don't think that understanding is enough without them also understanding the true position of the critics. So that's my take. What do you guys think? Let us know down below. We do read the comments and love to respond. So please comment away, and we will get to them and bring them up next time.
I regret to announce this is the end. I bid you all a very fond farewell.